Thank you, and good morning. My name is Linda Sheehan, and I'm honored to be here today moderating this esteemed panel of experts. The panel is being viewed live via webcast at webtv.un.org. And to the almost 95,000 followers on the UN Sustainable Development Twitter feed, please use hashtag HWN2014 to weigh in during the course of these proceedings. You can also follow the proceedings on the Facebook page for the UN Sustainable Development Knowledge Platform. I'd like to begin by thanking the plurinational state of Bolivia for sponsoring this important session. Notably, Bolivia was also the host in April 2010 for the World People's Conference on Climate Change and the Rights of Mother Earth. Out of this conference came the Universal Declaration on the Rights of Mother Earth, which provides for us today the language and structure of a potential Earth-centered governance approach, one that is truly in harmony with nature. The concept of harmony with nature reflects a non-anthropocentric approach to governance, one that is Earth-centered. Under today's human-centered governance approach, we've assumed incorrectly that we can avoid nature's rule of law and indefinitely expand material economic growth on a finite planet. As a result, we're witnessing fundamental and lasting degradation of the Earth's systems. To change course, we must accept our sense of well-being and tie it to nature and build our existence within nature's systems, rather than attempt to force nature to serve us. A new Earth-centered governance approach recognizes nature's rights to thrive, a recognition that benefits us all. The dialogue today will address key characteristics of this new Earth-centered approach to governance, as well as strategies for building it. We will be hearing now presentations on these topics from the panelists, after which we will turn to the floor for interventions. Our first speaker will be Dr. Frank Biermann. Dr. Biermann is a professor at VU University in Amsterdam, where he chairs the Environmental Policy Analysis Group at the Institute for Environmental Studies. He is also a visiting professor of Earth System Governance at Lund University in Sweden. Dr. Biermann specializes in the study of global environmental politics with emphasis on climate negotiations, UN reform, and global adaptation. His most recent book on Earth system governance will be released shortly by the MIT Press. He's won numerous awards for his path-breaking research on global environmental policy and holds PhD and master's degrees in political science and international law. Welcome, Dr. Biermann. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful and honored to speak today to this highest body of the United Nations. In my view, issues of global environmental change and sustainable development belong to the foremost problems that need to be addressed in the 21st century. And for this reason, I'm excited to be able to participate in today's fourth dialogue of the General Assembly on Harmony with Nature to commemorate International Mother Earth Day. I'm speaking here as a member of the scientific community, and in particular, as a representative of the Earth System Governance Project, which is a global network of hundreds of social scientists all working together to advance our knowledge on institutions, governance, political processes from local to global levels. Our project's name, the Earth System Governance Project, reflects already a major paradigmatic change in our understanding. Today, we are no longer facing challenges that can be accurately described by the term environmental policy. Instead, we are faced with a fundamental transformation of core elements of the entire Earth system. As the science community has shown in numerous assessments, humankind has become a major force that influences key system parameters of our planet. And this is reflected in an ongoing discussion among geologists about whether the current period in the history of our planet should now receive a new name, the Anthropocene, named after the most dominant species on Earth, humankind. For this reason, social scientists working on environmental policy now increasingly use the term Earth system governance. Earth system governance is today one of the key challenges for policymakers and governments, and for the collective institutions that governments have created. Most prominently, it is a key challenge for the United Nations. Will the United Nations deliver? In the academic networks of political scientists and public policy scholars, much recent research has criticized the effectiveness of multilateral decision-making in the UN context and in the UN style. There are scholars who have declared the end of mega multilateralism. There are scholars who even advise to never attend any international diplomatic conference as an observer, but rather to visit instead the side events of NGOs, local government, civil society, because this is where the initiative, the energy, the enthusiasm, and eventually also the solutions lie. And to some extent, these critics may have a point. General global networks of cities, public-private partnerships, social movements, they are all important. They all can and they all should play a role. However, recent research has also shown that such activities cannot replace state action and multilateral institutions. And despite recent setbacks, there is also sufficient evidence to show that multilateralism can work. As one example, multilateral cooperation has helped to phase out the emissions of chlorofluorocarbons and to protect the stratospheric ozone layer. However, even this success story shows one major shortcoming. It took over 20 years from the first diplomatic conferences to a largely effective international institutions on the ozone layer. In many other pressing issue areas, we do not have the time. For this reason, we need to engage in a process of serious reform of international governance and international institutions. We cannot resolve the problems of the 21st century with institutions that function with rules that essentially stem from the 19th century. We need transformation. We need to explore scientifically and politically new types of multilateralism. In early 2012, with a group of 33 leading social scientists, we published a paper in the journal Science on the reform of the institutional framework for sustainable development. Our main conclusion was that business as usual is not the way forward in sustainable development. Instead, we called for a constitutional moment in international relations and for fundamental reforms in the way in which negotiations and global policy processes are conducted. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you 3 examples. First, research indicates that the decision-making rules in multilateral negotiations and in the UN system are largely outdated. They are not effective and generally not fair. For one, the consensus rule is still one of the key decision-making principles in many multilateral environmental agreements. In consensus-based systems, each country has a veto. Any decision depends on the interest of the least interested government. This is not an effective way to make progress. Our research suggests that majority voting can speed up decisions. We do not argue that every decision must be taken by majority. Yet the more majority-based decision-making is accepted, the better for speedy decisions with sufficient force. And such decisions is what our planet urgently needs. But majority voting is determined, of course, by the weight of the votes that each country can hold and by the kind of majorities that are needed. In the United Nations of today, the one country, one vote approach gives, in theory, an absolute majority of votes to a theoretical coalition of countries that represent roughly 5% of global population. This underrepresents the millions of people who live in countries with large populations. Alternatives to this, however, also come with problems. Suppose the votes of countries would be weighted by the size of their population. An absolute majority would then be held by a theoretical coalition of merely 7 countries. The remaining 186 countries together would hold less than 50% of the votes. Again, many countries will have problems with such weighting of votes as well. Some might argue that economic strengths and financial contributions of countries could be weighted in decision-making. Obviously, however, this would come with similar problems of lack of acceptance by many countries. Others, again, might argue for regional seats. Yet, what would be these regions? Do we have clear and stable regional groupings of countries and interests in all parts of the world, useful for all issue domains? Compromises and innovative ideas are needed that generate support for a new type of multilateralism. We could think about different majority and voting rules for different issue areas. We can think about multiple, complex, combined, or layered majorities. And surely, we need to clearly define institutional guarantees that protect smaller countries. A second area of much-needed reform is the accountability of global decision-making. We have experienced over the last years an increase in global governance. New institutions were created, and old ones have gained new power. The stronger role for intergovernmental institutions raises problems of relating back to citizens. Citizens lack knowledge about what happens in New York or in Geneva, in anonymous institutions that are difficult to understand for citizens, difficult to follow, and thus difficult to support. A democratic deficit of the UN bureaucracy is felt in many parts of the world. When we want to strengthen the United Nations in order to help with our overarching goal of planetary stewardship, we have to address this potential lack of trust or understanding among our citizens. One way is to better include the voice of citizens in UN processes. This is being done already to some extent, and we clearly have moved forward from the secret diplomacy of the 19th century. This event today, with non-governmental stakeholders being invited to the podium, is a very good example among many others. Yet to really interlink global decisions with local trust and accountability, more steps are needed. In the academic community, numerous proposals are being discussed. Some scholars argue for global deliberative assemblies of cities of all countries and regions. Others call for a parliamentary assembly as a second chamber in the UN system, bringing in the direct representatives of the people. Others again argue for upgrading the major groups in the UN system through a forum of civil society organizations, also possibly as a second or as a third chamber that would represent global civil society. There are many advantages and disadvantages of all of these proposals, and I cannot go into these details here today. But I am truly convinced that if we want to have more effective global governance of sustainable development, there is an urgent need to address the current legitimacy and accountability deficit in global institutions. Third, there is no doubt that equity and fairness must be at the heart of a durable international framework for sustainable development. There is no country in the world where wealth is so unequally divided as on this planet as a whole. 842 million people do not have sufficient food. Planetary stewardship and Earth system governance, to be effective, they need to operate in this context. To this end, our policy reports argue clearly that financial support of poorer countries remains essential. More substantial financial resources could be made available, for example, through novel financial mechanisms, such as global emissions markets or air transportation levies for sustainability purposes. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the world saw a major transformative shift in governance after 1945 that led to the establishment of the United Nations and numerous other international organizations, along with far-reaching new international legal norms on human rights and economic cooperation. We need similar changes today, a constitutional moment in global governance on behalf of our stewardship for our planet. Such a reform of the intergovernmental system will not be the only level of societal change, nor the only type of action that is needed towards sustainability. Changes in the behavior of citizens, in societies, new engagement of civil society organizations, and reorientation of the private sector towards a sustainable economy. This is all crucial to achieve progress. Yet, in order for local and national action to be effective, the global institutional framework must be supportive and well-designed. New policies and new ideas are needed. Let us start to break new ground. Let us engage in a process of renewing our global institutions. The social science community is ready to engage with governments and with the UN system to assist in generating these new ideas. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your remarks, Dr. Biermann. Our second speaker is Dr. Barbara Baudot. Dr. Baudot is founder and president of the Triglav Circle, an international NGO with ECOSOC status comprised of scholars and professionals who work to enrich policy discussions with philosophical, moral, and spiritual insights. She's also a professor and chair of the politics department of St. Anselm's College, where she teaches international relations and environmental politics. Among other publications, Dr. Baudot wrote an article, Approaching Harmony with Nature, that was published in Future Perfect for the Rio+20 conference. She received her master's and PhD from Tufts University and has served the UN as an economics officer in New York and Geneva. Welcome, Dr. Baudot.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I wish to give special thanks to Ambassador Sasha Laurenti and in particular the plurinational state of Bolivia for sponsoring this event and for their leadership on this issue. I wish also to thank the organizer of this event, the President of the General Assembly, Ambassador John W. Ashe, and his office. It is a privilege to be invited to address this fourth session of the interactive dialogue of the General Assembly on harmony with nature. Permit me, please, ladies and gentlemen, to preface my remarks by recalling two facts. First, in nearly half a century since the Stockholm Conference put the human environment on the international agenda, the main indicators of the health of the planet, planet Earth, show continuing deterioration. There is no need to insist on this alarming fact. Reports such as those of the United Nations Environment Programme and the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change are sufficiently eloquent. Second, it is the word environment and not the word nature which is overwhelmingly used in debates and texts of the international community in respect to Mother Earth. From Stockholm to Rio+20, the word nature is virtually absent from the international discourse on the strategies for limiting damage to the environment. And this is not simply a matter of semantics. Suffice to note the token roles in the international discourse on sustainable development played by the World Charter of Nature and the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. It is my contention that the neglect of nature as such is at the core of many problems we are confronted with. A shift of our attention to give greater heed to nature per se in our policies and actions would give humankind a better chance at survival. Let me make 2 points in support of these convictions. First, there are two worldviews, one focused on the environment and the other on nature. This distinction is at the heart of our problems today. Second, to approach harmony with nature, it is imperative to consult other sources of knowledge in addition to the physical and social sciences, monopolizing the present discourse on the environment. I trust we all agree that thoughts and ideas are the building blocks of society. The emotions they articulate, the attitudes they project, and the desires they embody define the spirit of our time, even the perception of nature in our age. Thus, it is necessary to reflect on the significance of intellectual and spiritual resources as essential elements of social change. Given these assumptions, I will distinguish first the two approaches to nature, both of which have been evident at least since the 18th century. The first view is nature identified with the human environment. This is the dominant worldview. It puts a premium on material progress made possible by the extraordinary achievements of science and its technological innovations and applications. It institutionalizes a model of the good life, the good material life, that is centrally based on economic development and the measuring of its success in quantitative terms, in particular, gross national product. It visualizes humankind as having the right, even the responsibility, to enlist the natural resources of the earth for its own benefit. In this paradigm, nature has been re-identified in scientific terms, at least since the 1960s, as the human environment. In political economic terms, the environment consists in the physical surroundings and the external social influences working on the individual. Metaphorically, it is our planetary house managed by the tools of science, technology, and economics. Reduced to environment, nature has been demystified, disenchanted, and deconstructed for the convenience of scientific inquiry. As such, its scattered and unrelated parts have been reduced to a scientific vocabulary, being identified as ecology, biodiversity, biosphere, habitat, wildlife, raw materials, and natural resources, pollution, sinks, climate, and atmosphere. Most seriously, the cost of repairing the damage inflicted on any of these parts is weighed in a scale of costs and benefits against jobs and economic growth. The second view, nature, the whole. The world that seeks harmony with nature perceives nature in grander terms. Nature is a wide and open concept. Some associate it with the elements of the natural world, trees, rivers, animals, and the like. Others see it as the processes whereby these came into existence. Still others identify nature with the whole, with the subatomic and cosmic layers of the universe and the realm of spirit, as well as the earth and the visible universe. Thus, few would deny that nature is the source and cradle of life, encompassing those unseen and immaterial life forces that have brought us and everything else into existence. For Spinoza, God and nature were synonymous. In summary, nature demands a holistic vision that accompanies both its material and metaphysical properties. As a minimum, nature is difficult to conceive in any simple, objectifiable way while still conveying the breadth of its meaning. Inherently, nature remains mysterious, with many inexplicable, enchanting, and disenchanting, even threatening facets. It has intrinsic value, extrinsic value, and as well as instrumental value. According to this ethos, every entity, molecule, and atom is an indivisible part of an all-inclusive organism. If humankind continues to embrace the first worldview, the one that prevails in the spirit of our times, the way to harmony between humanity and nature is difficult to perceive, even irrelevant. The second one offers a holistic vision of a path toward harmony with nature and a new spirit for our times. My second major point was the imperative to use different sources of knowledge. Given all the interconnections between what is conceivable to the human senses and only conceivable to the mind, regaining and maintaining harmony with nature requires the knowledge, inspiration, and wisdom not only from scientists, but also from philosophers, leading political leaders as thinkers, poets, sages, and sensitive individuals whose interactions with nature, all their imaginations, inspirations, as well as revelations, offer insights into nature's values. Each of the following sources of knowledge have something to offer in the quest for harmony with nature: scientific inquiry, philosophical reflection, artistic inspiration, and spiritual insight. Science. Mainstream modern science focuses on what the senses see as what is measurable and observable. Although scientific knowledge and interpretations of natural science can be blamed for catapulting the world and the individual into a regime of domineering materiality, this is not the whole picture. Physics and higher mathematics point to many more significant ideas concerning the realities of the universe and life that removes the chains binding human intentions to material circumstances and aspirations. With the assistance of enlightened reason, high mathematics, and imagination, modern science can lead humanity to a high sense of purpose that perceives value in living in rhythm with nature. Physicist Brian Greene's view summarizes this standpoint. To open our ideas to the true nature of the universe has always been one of physics' primary purposes. It is hard to imagine a more mind-stretching experience than learning, as we have over the last century, that the reality we experience is but a glimmer of the reality that is. Philosophy. Philosophy has a critical role to play in the decision-making institutions and processes aimed at harmonizing the needs and aspirations of man with the realities of nature. Philosophy should again be, as it was with Plato and Socrates, an effort at marrying knowledge and practical reason with wisdom and love. As described by leading 20th century philosopher Jacques Maritain, the instruments philosophers employ include intelligible perception, abstract intuition, and judgment. It instills the intelligible contents from sense experience. Animated by human intellect, these instruments provide legitimate sources of knowledge of a metaphysical kind. Philosophical thinking questions the primary principles of being, including identity, unity, finality, and purposes. Because philosophers dig below the surface of material appearances in seeking to understand the essence of being, philosophy is essential to a more holistic understanding of nature. And philosophy, by virtue of such refined thinking, sheds precious light on decision-making aimed at preserving the environment in harmony with nature in many essential ways. Arts. Artists, whether poets, storytellers, musicians, painters, and architects, and their works, inspire relations between human society and nature in ways that enchant nature and the universe for humankind. They touch the heart. The artist projects thoughts generated in the imaginative realm that cannot be engaged within the framework of empiricism and scientific rationality, nor satisfied by economic progress. They remain, yet, essential to inspiring lifestyles in cadence with the imperatives of nature. Artists and poets evoke the beauties and mysteries of nature, or simply describe human beings in their symbiotic relations with their surroundings. They have always been the privileged media between man and nature. It has been through this source of knowledge that people of various cultures have traditionally kept their specific sense of harmony with nature. And it is this source of knowledge, perhaps even to a greater degree than philosophy, that has been pushed aside by the modern form of scientism and materialism, or I should say the modern obsession with scientism and materialism. The arts need to be moved from the realm of soft values to the realm of debates and decisions on which the future of humankind depends. The arts offer clear, holistic visions of nature by freeing its outer appearances from the drab blur of triteness or familiarity. Simple, fundamental things as trees, clouds, cobwebs, and firewood take on deeper meaning in the arts. Works of fine art with widened imaginations offer consolation and escape from mundane obsessions and recovery of clearer visions of infinite reality. In concluding this section, I should like to mention the late Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who constantly evoked the miraculous in his fiction and who gave as much attention to his literary work as he did the policy issues of his time. Also in this context, I should like to mention the Second Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Dag Hammarskjöld, for whom the arts were the sine qua non informants of his work in seeking world peace. Spiritual or religion. The role religion plays in influencing the social behavior can be critical for believers and non-believers in determining relations between nature and humankind. Like poetic inspiration, knowledge gained from religion derives from intuitive or mystical experience, revelation as the gift of grace, and spiritual insight. This form of knowing is beyond the frameworks of logic and science. For believers and non-believers, receptivity to this way of knowing can inspire gratitude, wonder, empathy, and an ethic of caring for nature. These thoughts and sentiments can be crucial to the development of more holistic laws and policies informed by high values. In summary, if one admits that nature has metaphysical as well as material dimensions and both intrinsic and instrumental value, is it not crucial that a holistic and interdisciplinary approach be adopted in this effort? Should not philosophical thinking, poetic inspiration, and spiritual reflection contribute to the work of the physical and social sciences to this end? The points I've made are not mere abstractions disconnected from the real world. The change of spirit advocated here has very concrete and positive implications for human health and social well-being. I am sure you are aware of the considerable initiatives in agriculture and other sectors now taking place at local, county, and regional levels that are advancing the cause of a vibrant, sustainable society in sync with the rhythms of nature. Combined, they give ground for hope. And it'll be my colleague, Mr. Gerritsen, who will speak more on that issue. In conclusion, I ask you to imagine a world society as immersed in nature as it is in technology, where we use all our senses, where we feel more alive. It is my contention that harmony with nature is not a mere catchphrase, it is an imperative goal for society. To create more amenable conditions for an ecologically sustainable future in harmony with nature demands considerably more thoughtful reflection, intellectual work, and practical initiatives by governments and civil society. Consistent with Václav Havel's line of thinking, a prerequisite for any effective environmental policy is a radical change in heart and spirit. Havel wrote, "Only humankind's understanding of its place in the universe will allow the development of new models of behavior, scales of values, and objectives in life, and through these means, finally bind a new spirit and meaning to specific regulations, treaties, and institutions." Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Dr. Baudot. Our third panelist will be Mr. Jim Gerritsen. Mr. Gerritsen has owned and operated Wood Prairie Farm in northern Maine for almost 40 years and grows and distributes throughout the country certified organic seed potatoes. Mr. Gerritsen also co-founded and serves as the president of the Organic Seed Growers and Trade Association. This association was the lead plaintiff in a recent challenge against Monsanto regarding the potential for farm contamination by Monsanto's genetically modified seed products. For his work protecting organic farming and seeds from various threats, including GMO products, Mr. Gerritsen was named one of the 25 visionaries who are changing the world. We look forward to your remarks, Mr. Gerritsen.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me here today. As Linda said, I'm an organic farmer. We have an organic farm in northern Maine. It's called Wood Prairie Farm. I'd like to express my gratitude particularly to our friends from the plurinational state of Bolivia for your involvement and your generous contribution to the betterment of our world, including your role in organizing today's Harmony with Nature session. There's one more reason that I'm grateful, and this is more of a personal nature. I have gratitude to the Bolivians, along with your neighbors from Peru and Chile and Ecuador, for your most generous gift given to the commons and given to the world's people, and that is the gift of the wonderful food that we call potatoes. It is all of you and your ancestors spanning 7,000 years who developed and selected and protected this crop, which now the world recognizes and calls Andean potatoes. It's now the world's fourth largest crop, following wheat, rice, and corn. Before me, my father and my grandfather grew potatoes. We grow potatoes, and we make our living from growing potatoes. To me, it's very significant, and my gratitude is that we have been gifted by this in order to make our living. So thank you to those from the Andean region where potatoes originated. Now here's a picture of my family. On a family farm, all of us have jobs. We work year-round, and it's a labor of love. We enjoy what we're doing. I'm happy to say that I brought my 2 daughters down with me yesterday. We drove 600 miles from Maine, and my daughters that are 11 and 15 years old up in the gallery, this is their first time in New York City. So our farm is in the state of Maine, one of the northern tier states in the United States. 90% of Maine's land area is covered with forest, and our farm is an isolated farm, which makes it particularly valuable for growing organic seed. Isolation is a great benefit to us. Now, Maine is probably most known for its lobsters. In addition, with that forest, we have a lot of people that log. We have neighbors that log. And in addition, within Maine, we do have farming. Dairy is one of the largest occupations among farmers in Maine. Also, wild blueberries that grow wild on the blueberry barrens and have for thousands of years. But potatoes is the single biggest crop. This is a picture that appeared in the National Geographic magazine, the issue December 1995, and it's a picture of my wife, Megan, and our then 3-month-old baby, Caleb, who is now 19 and has been with us every year for potato harvest. We are one of the last areas in the United States where the schools are still closed in the fall so that the children can help the family farmers get their potato crop harvested. This is how we harvest potatoes now, and this is a harvester called a Yuko that we imported from Finland. Thank you. Now, I want to talk about organic farming and what it is. What exactly does organic mean? Organic farming is a sustainable agricultural system which is natural in that it fundamentally seeks to be in harmony with nature. It aspires to emulate the sophisticated natural systems of Mother Earth. By design, an organic farm is diverse in the range of crops that are grown. This creates a dynamic resilience and facilitates crop rotation, which has the important benefit of interrupting insect and disease cycles and promoting nutrient cycling and soil health. Crop rotation is a practice common to every organic farm. Livestock and crop production are often integrated in complementary fashion on the same farm. On organic farms, there is a balance, and some crops are harvested as food, and other crops, known as cover crops and green manures, are grown to improve the soil. An organic farm is full of life, of soil life, of plant life, of animal and human life. Traditional human knowledge, elevating the skills of husbandry and stewardship, are recognized and honored. Organic systems are biased towards long-term benefit and stability. Man-made synthetic chemicals or genetically engineered inputs have no place on an organic farm. They are neither needed nor desired. In fact, their toxicity and persistence have a destructive impact on the intricate organic farm ecosystem. Organic farming is nature-based and soil-based. Healthy soil is the foundation of organic agriculture. The health, quality, and fertility of soil on an organic farm improves over time. Significantly, healthy soil grows healthy plants. Healthy plants are in turn strong and vigorous and they have natural defenses against insect and disease damage. Healthy plants produce delicious, nutrient-dense food, which is high quality, it's wholesome, and it sustains life. On the other hand, soil which is unbalanced, abused, and made toxic by synthetic inputs and harmful farming techniques grow plants which lack health and vitality and are subject to insect and disease pressures, which in turn need more chemicals to control. Which would you choose to feed to your family? Nutrient-dense organic food from healthy soil and plants, or food harvested from sickly plants and sprayed with toxic chemicals? An increasing number of scientific studies make clear that organic farming is the superior production system when it comes to the metrics of food quality, food sovereignty, and resilience in the face of climate change. One of the most important studies supporting a shift to organic farming was issued by this very United Nations last September. That study is entitled, "Wake Up Before It's Too Late, Make Agriculture Truly Sustainable Now for Security in a Changing Climate." So perhaps we will agree that organic farming, predicated on harmony with nature, is our best choice for going forward. Yet organic farming does have challenges. These challenges are primarily political and economic in nature. They originate with powerful forces unwilling to give up wrested control and a risky focus on short-term gain. To offer one example of the challenges, we are seed growers, carrying on a tradition of improving and selecting and multiplying seed, a practice which has seen farmers in control for millennia. That is, for 10,000 years since humankind began to farm, seed has been in the control and possession of farmers, the people, part of the commons. Recently, however, in recent decades, private corporations have increasingly taken control of world seed resources, aided by political decisions which sanction theft from the commons via a new concept of patenting life forms. Our recent Osgata et al. V. Monsanto federal lawsuit attempted to challenge the validity of Monsanto's transgenic seed patents. It also sought protection for family farmers who, through no fault of their own, might have become contaminated by Monsanto's patented seed and then perversely be accused of patent infringement for possessing Monsanto's patented material. After 3 years of legal battle, we failed to gain standing in order to proceed. However, our position, the basis of our lawsuit, was vindicated, and we won a partial victory when the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit in Washington, D.C., ordered Monsanto to not sue American farmers should they become contaminated with trace amounts of Monsanto's patented material. Now, there are many layers surrounding the right of farmers to farm the way we choose and to have our crops protected from unwanted genetic and chemical trespass. To aid farmers in protecting themselves, this winter, my organization, Osgata, published a peer-reviewed handbook for farmers entitled Protecting Organic Seed Integrity, the Organic Farmer's Handbook to GE Avoidance and Testing. And on the table to the side, to my right, there's a stack of handbooks, and I would be delighted if each of you would take one with you home and read it. It's a universal concept that farmers need the tools and techniques and understanding of how to protect themselves in these days to where in countries like our United States, genetically engineered crops are becoming very wide scale and planted on many acres. So how do we implement harmony with nature? I believe that a study of the public trust doctrine will be helpful. The public trust doctrine, which goes back to Roman times, holds that government simply does not possess the authority to sell or privatize the commons. It holds, for example, that government does not have the right to sell to a factory via a permit the ability to pollute the water or to pollute the air. Nor does it have a right for a government-sanctioned monopoly, which is what essentially a patent is, to a corporation which takes an asset out of the commons and gives it to a private entity. Lacking authority, these actions are illegitimate. What I would like to do in closing is read an excerpt from a recently published book by Dr. Mary Christina Wood. The book is entitled Nature's Trust: Environmental Law for a New Ecological Age. This is what Dr. Wood writes. The trust infuses existing environmental law and bureaucracy with a protective fiduciary principle that can rise to modern ecological challenges. When taken to the global level, the trust becomes a diplomatic framework from which international obligations emerged to protect the earth endowment for all generations. The sovereign trust obligation offers a catalyzing principle to citizens worldwide in their common struggle to hold government accountable for protecting life systems. Resonating deeply and resolutely within the ancestral memory of humanity, trust principles must now revive to stir a global assertion of citizenship in defense of humanity and all future generations. May we all have the courage and the conviction to dedicate our lives to harmony with nature and to the protection of Mother Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerritsen. And if I might add, organic farming is particularly relevant to our discussion today because it illustrates a way to live in harmony with nature. We're here talking about harmony with nature, but you're living it, so we thank you for that. Our final panelist today will be Dr. Fander Falconí Benitez, who is a research professor at the Latin American Faculty of Social Sciences, or FLACSO, in Ecuador. Under President Correa, he was the National Secretary of Planning and Minister of Foreign Affairs. He was also in charge of the country's National Plan for Well-Being. He holds a master's degree in economics and master's and PhD degrees in ecological economics. And he's done postdoctoral research at the Institute of Social Studies in The Hague. He has published numerous articles on environmental issues in economics, including the economics of sustainable development. Thank you, and we look forward to your remarks.
Muchas gracias por...
Thank you very much for inviting me here. I wish to thank the plurinational state of Bolivia for this initiative, as well as the ambassador, our representative in New York at the United Nations, Ambassador Lasso of Ecuador. The main idea behind this presentation that I'd like to share with you on this important day is that we have started a deep civilization crisis, and its manifestations are notable in various places, including in our thought processes. The current economic global crisis is one of civilization. It has economic, social, food, and physical environmental consequences, and there is a interrelated set of factors involved, an international governance order that has collapsed, and there are no truly binding agreements to tackle these major environmental and social challenges. And so we should recall that 1% of the richest in the world receive 99% of the world's income. And so in a few years, we'll lose the ice in the Antarctic, and we are dealing with other challenges, as we've read in recent reports and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change of the United Nations. We should also recall that many countries want to achieve the consumption patterns of rich countries. That's, of course, desirable in a world of finite resources. And there are great injustices, of course, for particular populations and growing environmental injustice, as we've seen in recent publications on the environment and nature, especially due to the loss of biodiversity. This is a metaphor that reflects the environmental problems today, the probability versus uncertainty. The probability of environmental damage can be very low, but it doesn't take much. There are high stakes involved. And so this can lead to a planetary collapse. This graph shows the evolution of GDP of the planet over a long period of time from the 1960s. It shows the average in real terms, not taking into account inflation, and we see a graph. It looks like a electrogram. It has highs and lows, and in recent years we can see that there's been a deep global economic recession on the planet. These are their growth rates, but this helps us also to understand this phenomenon. These are the changes in carbon dioxide emissions in absolute terms. These are not rates, but annual emissions. This is the main indicator, as we know, that we have in order to visualize the effects of climate change. In addition, last year, the oldest laboratory for measuring carbon dioxide emissions noted that for the first time, we exceeded 400 ppm of CO2, and we are moving towards 2 ppm per year. That is to say that with these growth rates and the macroeconomic pattern we are moving towards a problem of civilization or a planetary collapse, as many anthropologists say, and scientists and others. In other slides, we can also see the reality. There are economic factors that obscure a true planetary crisis. There are other indicators, social ones, environmental ones, and physical ones that deal with the behavior of humankind on the planet. And those economic factors obscure this. In order to address this crisis of civilization, there are politics today, geopolitics, international geopolitics at hand. There is a discussion on poverty and wealth as being determining factors for environmental problems. We cannot deny that, of course, poverty does generate environmental degradation, but wealth too creates major environmental troubles. There are high rates of emissions and an environmental burden for the planet. And so there are responsibilities. We are all responsible. But of course, these are differentiated actions in order to prevent this collapse. There are various cooperative solutions. We can build societies that are respectful, involving 99% of the population in dealing with the environment. We can understand on the basis of this context, we can use, for example, the living well approach in the Bolivian constitution and Ecuadorian one. And in the Ecuadorian constitution, this concept of living well is in fact in the constitution that was approved last year in 2008 and elected by the people. And so we do need political will to create a future that is different for humankind. Clearly, we need to build sustainable societies respectful of the environment. This is a matter of principles, but also emanates from the right of humankind. And we need to go into greater depth on the right of nature. These are recognized in the Constitution of Ecuador as well, and is beginning to be part of an international discussion on matters of environmental justice as well. This means recognizing practical measures such as the global recognition of net emissions and in dealing with fossil fuels and carbon emissions. We need urgent responses to this crisis of civilization in social and material terms, and to generate new ways of thinking and decisive collective policies throughout the world. We need to go in depth on this. This is important. This is important for mutual respect between our societies in the various ways of living on the planet, but it's also important because this has implications on social environmental conflicts in our day-to-day lives for all our societies. Recently, an atlas of environmental justice was published, and we could clearly see the conflicts that were caused by a lack of policies on and the lack of seeing the link between environment and society, and we need to address this through collective action. I think that the key message from the court's position is that if we don't change our behavior as human beings, as Gabriel Garcia Marquez said, we must be more careful now than ever to be wiser. Otherwise, this will have been useless. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. They provide an important foundation for understanding that the necessary evolution to Earth-centered governance that we're discussing today in harmony with nature must also include an evolution in economic systems to respect nature, local communities, and the well-being of both present and future generations. I'd like to now thank all of the panelists for your insightful remarks. They will begin to help us conceptualize and implement Earth-centered governance, which will begin to allow us to create integrated communities of people and nature thriving together. I'd like to now open the floor for comments and questions. In this regard, interveners from the floor are encouraged to limit their remarks to 2 to 3 minutes so that all requests for the floor can be accommodated. Space will be reserved at the end for 2 selected civil society discussants, but we would like to endeavor to end the panel at 12:30 so that we can hear concluding remarks from the offices of the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly. I would like to give the floor first to the representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
In this statement on behalf of the Group of 77 and China, the group would like to congratulate the President of the General Assembly for convening this interactive dialogue of the General Assembly of Harmony with Nature in the framework of the Resolution 67/214, dated December 21st, 2012. In this regard, the Group of 77 and China congratulates the panel members for their extraordinary contributions in this matter to approach the international community into new models of sustainable life, reaching the balance on the economical, social, and environmental spheres for generations to come. We recall the concern over the documented environmental degradation and all the negative impacts on nature resulting from human activity. At this stage, the Group of 77 in China reaffirms the resolution adopted by the General Assembly on December 21, 2009, in which is reflected our strong belief that humanity should live in harmony with nature. The Group of 77 in China would like to remind all member states that the consumption and production patterns have severely affected the Earth's carrying capacity and that human behavior has been the result of a fundamental failure to recognize that human beings are an inseparable part of nature. Therefore, we cannot damage it without severely damaging ourselves. In this context, we would like to highlight once again that environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, poverty, hunger, malnutrition, diseases, and economic instability persist despite the analytical capability and technological capacity deployed by current civilizations towards eradicating them. For these concerns, we make the Secretary General's words ours by recalling the intention to explore and look for new trends of educational systems on sustainable development to reach a strengthened sustainable development education mainstream worldwide. We would like to emphasize today, the Mother Day, Earth Day, on the urgency of the international community's duty to rebalance our relationship with nature, taking into account the different processes that are going on to decide targeting goals in the SDGs and the post-2015 development agenda. This is the time to act in order to reach a tangible concept of sustainable development, which should guide human beings to acquire a behavior that is at harmony with nature. The group acknowledged that the international community has made substantial progress on sustainable development in the outcome document of Rio+20, The Future We Want, which also stands as an important contribution for all our cultures and civilizations, pursuing a sustainable development system, recognizing coherence on the integration of the economic, social, and environmental dimensions. Finally, the Group of 77 in China ensures that the outcome of these and previous interactive dialogues of harmony with nature will serve as a strong input on concrete recommendations for the upcoming debates that the United Nations will soon face. I thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia, and I turn the floor to the distinguished representative from Algeria.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam. First of all, I'd like to thank the President of the General Assembly for convening this important interactive dialogue on harmony with nature in line with the celebration of International Mother Earth Day. We'd like to associate ourselves with the statement of the distinguished representative of Bolivia, delivered on behalf of the G77 in China. My delegation would also like to express its appreciation to all participants and panelists who shed light on this issue, namely harmony with nature. My delegation, furthermore, would like to recall the significant report of the Secretary General on this issue of harmony with nature, A68325, as well as General Assembly Resolution 68-16. These two documents are useful contributions for today's debate. Madam Moderator, we should like to recall that the drafting of the post-2015 development agenda is an opportunity to encourage political will and to give concrete scope to international commitments so that this post-2015 development agenda can genuinely be a development program encompassing all concerns of the international community, particularly seeking to eradicate poverty and promote sustainable development. The challenges that we're facing today entail how the concept of harmony with nature could be better implemented while also taking into account the interests of different stakeholders. And in this regard, today's debate gives us some response, some answers to this. The sustainable development goals in this regard, within the framework of this process of the goals to be attained, can help us with a view to really taking into account and addressing these issues. So, Madam Moderator, these are some of the comments that the Algerian delegation wished to share with you. Thank you.
Many thanks to the distinguished representative from Algeria. And I would like to now turn to the floor to the distinguished representative from Rwanda. Dr. Benno Werlen has been delegated to speak on behalf of the delegation of Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. I'm just here to let you know that we have been approached by the International Geographical Union on a great initiative that we deem very relevant for today's interactive dialogue on harmony with nature. And the project itself aims at having the year 2016 declared as the UN International Year of Global Understanding. And I have the privilege to be here today with the personality behind that noble initiative, and it is Dr. Benno Werlen, Executive Director, Professor of Social Geography in the Department of Geography of the University of Friedrich Schiller University, Jena. And he's going to enlighten you further on this important initiative. And they are hoping that it's going to be presented to the UN General Assembly, and they request support from member states. Thank you very much. I'm going to let him talk to you on this initiative.
Excellencies, Mesdames et Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about the initiative of the International Geographical Union for an International UN Year on Global Understanding. I would like to use the opportunity to invite you to support this vital initiative with its extensive challenges. The IGU seeks support for a UN International Year and the proclamation by the General Assembly of this year 2016 for global understanding. What is the International Year of Global Understanding? In a nutshell, this initiative recognizes that global social and climate change requires a global level of understanding. It aims to bridge the gap in awareness between local actions and global effects, will provide information on culturally differentiated ways to reach global sustainability. The International Year of Global Understanding develops a blueprint for a new geographical view of a radically changing world. We are all experiencing every day that globalization has broadened this bringing far-flung places and people into ever closer contact. New kinds of supranational communities are emerging in an accelerating pace. At the same time, these trends do not efface the local. Globalization is also associated with a remarked reaffirmation of places and regions as distinctive forms of human action. All human actions remain in one or the other way, regionally and locally contextualized. The acceleration of globalization is bringing about a new world order. This involves both the integration of the natural human ecosystems all over the world into a unified planetary environment and the steady emergence of an integrated global socio-economical reality. Global environmental change research has produced, again documented in the latest IPCC report released on April 13, unambiguous scientific insights into Earth system processes. But so far, these insights are too rarely translated into effective policies. It becomes obvious that we need to deepen our knowledge of socio-cultural context to improve social and cultural acceptance of scientific knowledge and to reach culturally differentiated paths to global sustainability. Given these conditions, the IYGU acknowledges that societies and cultures determine the ways we live with and shape our natural living context. The International Year of Global Understanding addresses the ways we live in an increasingly globalized world and the transformation of nature from the perspective of global sustainability, the objective the IYGU wishes to achieve for the sake of future generations. To achieve this, genuine transdisciplinarity research is now a first-order necessity. For this, we need to overcome the established divide between the natural and social sciences. Natural and social scientific knowledge have to be integrated with non-scientific and non-Western forms of knowledge to develop a global competence framework. In this context, effective solutions based on bottom-up decisions and actions need to complement the existing top-down measures. The objectives of the International Year of Global Understanding will complement those of the Future Earth initiatives initiated by the Council of Science and the International Social Science Council. The International Year of Global Understanding has 5 objectives. First, establish a comprehensive global understanding and awareness of the natural and cultural embeddedness of all human actions. Contribute to changing ecologically harmful habits by designing culturally differentiated, exemplary, alternative models of core everyday best practices. Enhance awareness of the individual capacity and responsibility for everyday decision-making. Fourth, produce school teaching models and study guidelines to be implemented at all educational levels, from primary to tertiary and post-experience education. And fifth, finally, serve as catalyst for transdisciplinary cooperation and improve the culturally differentiated transfer of scientific insights and so into social practices. With this, IYGU will A, advance science and technology for sustainable development, B, contribute to the achievement of the UN's post-2015 action agenda for sustainable development, and third, but not least, promote UNESCO's priority for Africa. All in all, IYGU's objectives involve 3 core elements: research, education, and information. 8 regional action centers, Kigali, Beijing, and Hamilton, are already fixed. Others like Tunis, Mexico City, Rio de Janeiro, Nijmegen, Tokyo, and Los Angeles are in negotiation. All these centers will, in cooperation with an IYGU General Secretariat and supported by more than 90 national action centers all over the world, coordinate all action in these 3 fields. Hosting institutions are so far ministries, national academies, universities, or departments of geography. Each regional center, or even each of the more than 90 national centers, will represent, during the International Year 2016, 365 ways to reach global sustainability, 265 culturally specific solutions in as many regional contexts as possible, every day one example of best practice made accessible to everyone, everywhere. To sum up, the IYGU initiative aims to raise awareness of the global embeddedness of everyday life. That is, awareness of the inextricable links between local action and global phenomena. The IYGU hopes to stimulate people to take responsibility for their actions when they consider the challenges of global social and climate change by taking sustainability into account when making everyday decisions. The IYGU program focuses on three interfaces and is a threefold bridge builder. It focuses on the interface of the local and global by promoting global understanding. It focuses on the interface of the social and the natural, and it focuses on everyday science, on everyday life and science by integrating different types of knowledge. The last two ones start from the premises that we are all part of nature with our body. Nature is not something else than we are part of. To conclude, this initiative has already the full support of UNESCO, the International Council for Science, ICSU, the International Social Science Council, ISSC, the International Council for Philosophy and Humanistic Studies, CIPSH, and is expected to become part of the Future Earth Initiative, co-sponsored by ICSU, ISSC, UNESCO, UNEP, UN universities, and the Belmont Forum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the IGU seeks support for UN General Assembly proclamation for the International Year of Global Understanding in 2016. In the name of the IGU, ICSU, ISSC, and CIPSH, I would like to invite you to support this vital initiative with its extensive challenges in this application process and beyond. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the IGU seeks your support for the proclamation by the UN General Assembly of the International Year of Global Understanding. We invite you to support this vital initiative and its significant challenges. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. I would like to next call the distinguished representative of Cuba, followed by the representative of Ecuador. There are a number of other speakers who we are looking forward to hearing their interventions, so I would like to move the panelists' remarks and comments on the important interventions that we've heard so far till closer to the end time of 12:30, though I would encourage panelists, if they have a specific comment, to let me know, and I'll be sure to find an appropriate time to allow that comment to be made. Next, please, the distinguished representative of Cuba.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Distinguished colleagues and guests, my delegation wishes to join in others in thanking the President of the General Assembly for convening this interactive dialogue of the General Assembly on harmony with nature in the context of Resolution 68/216. We also wish to thank the plurinational state of Bolivia and its government. Through its permanent mission in New York, it has played a great leadership role in addressing the theme today. We also thank the panelists for their excellent contributions in this interactive dialogue in examining the various economic approaches in the context of sustainable development. This fosters an ethical basis for the relationship between humankind and planet Earth. Madam Moderator, living in harmony with nature must mean for all member states of the United Nations, must be an imperative ethical, social, political, and economic imperative. We face an alternative development model which aims to guarantee the right of humanity to exist. The economic and social basis for this model is based on the change that is needed to the current production and consumption patterns based on a policy of waste and irrational use of resources of nature. This requires a more equitable distribution of resources and wealth, and the development of a deep feeling of global solidarity with countries that are the most vulnerable and the poorest in the world. Madam Moderator, Cuba, from its victorious revolution in 1959, has been implementing a development strategy which aims to seek equity and social inclusion. This is on the basis of the sustainable use of resources that the country has, including natural resources, Nevertheless, for developing countries such as mine, national actions and the political will of states is insufficient. We also require a strong international cooperation and great political commitment in order to fulfill the internationally agreed goals. The world today faces the consequences of the economic, financial, environmental, energy, and food crises. These are the result of a prolonged and unsustainable pattern of production and consumption of developed countries and the exhaustion of a development model based on the indiscriminate exploitation of natural resources of the planet. This is clearly reflected in the current economic international model and the fact that it is unsustainable. Madam Moderator, we just have 1 year and 4 months left before the deadline for our MDGs. Nevertheless, in some cases, these goals will not be fulfilled. The reason is not that we have set out elusive goals or goals that are overly ambitious. The reason is that there is a lack of political will on behalf of the richest countries in the world to tackle their historical debt towards the poor countries. We are in a historic moment for humanity. This situation can change if there is genuine commitment towards the life of all citizens on the planet. We are now in the midst of defining what will be the UN Development Agenda beyond 2015, including we are also crafting the Sustainable Development Goals, and we would urge that the following, and thinking about the following. Will developed countries stop consuming 7 to 8 times more than the consumption of developing countries? Will developing countries receive the technology transfer required in order to ensure that their economies can be ecologically rational? Can we resolve the differences relating to intellectual property rights such that these IP rights are no longer an excuse for technologies so that these are not adequately transferred to the South? Will we cancel the developing countries' external debt in order to enhance their sustainable development? Will developed countries increase their commitments to reduce emissions and contribute towards their historic responsibility and their ecological debt in order to put an end to this boundless development and continue in economic growth? These proposals of privatization, social security cuts, the salary or job cuts, redistribution of savings cannot be proposals. This will not help us to eradicate poverty. This will only lead to more poverty and hunger. On the contrary, these policies will lead to social discontent, instability, and conflicts, and will be used as pretext by some developing countries to intervene in countries of the South and to appropriate their natural resources. This will only foster a greater development of the arms industry and consequently will further contaminate the environment. The current international financial architecture is stifling the economies of developing countries with policies that are not in line with the true priorities for development in the South. Furthermore, this imposes high interest rates on loans being offered, and there are also well-known conditionalities and requirements for receiving such aid. To conclude, Madam Moderator, we wish to state that this dialogue we are holding today must focus the international community's attention on the true causes of the multiple crises facing the world, the unfair distribution of wealth nationally and internationally. The results of this should be part of the input into the intergovernmental negotiations process for the post-2015 development agenda. I thank you.
Thank you. I now turn the floor to the distinguished representative from Ecuador, to be followed by the representative of Malaysia.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. A Peruvian philosopher told us that the greatest contribution from Gabriel Garcia Marquez and his book, 100 Years of Solitude, was understanding the circular notion of time. And for our land, for our earth. And from this language, these sensibilities, we have built this ancestral idea of the relationship between nature and humankind. And on this planet, this should be taken on now by ourselves. It is up to us to address this for the good of nature. May I also, Madam Moderator, underscore the importance of this meeting being coordinated jointly with the plurinational state of Bolivia and my delegation, Ecuador. This is a very important meeting as we celebrate the International Mother Earth Day in this fourth interactive dialogue on harmony with nature. I also wish to endorse the statement made by the Group of 77 in China and wish to thank the panelists for their contributions. These are new lessons for us to help us to understand this new relationship between humankind and the urgent need to undertake this new type of relationship between humankind and nature. Ecuador has already taken on an important step towards recognizing the rights of nature. While some seek only domination rather than love of nature, it is in harmony with nature that we seek this buen vivir, to live well. So it is fitting that the world should discuss this approach, and jointly we must forge a universal declaration of the rights of nature. The protection of Mother Earth knows no boundaries. Therefore, the responses must go beyond national commitments. We have just one world. It is an interrelated, interdependent world. And it is ailing from the harm that we are inflicting upon it from all four corners of this planet. We have said this time and again. We must forge a global arrangement to address this. Ecuador recognizes that the path towards ensuring the rights of nature has yet to be defined. Consequently, we reiterate our call to develop a different kind of knowledge and propose changing the epistemological matrix that has guided development over the last millennium towards a more comprehensive vision. We also propose the establishment of a group of friends of Mother Earth in order to continue with the discussion on forging this universal declaration of the rights of nature. Recognizing the rights of nature does not necessarily mean that we can't use its resources. This means that we must set out a new definition based on respect, a renewed ethical approach for the responsible use of its elements. That would help us to live a full life and enable us to meet the basic needs of all humankind without exploitation and predatory, unsustainable consumerism. To do this, we should broaden this discussion and ensure that we can link this discussion with the current process for building a post-2015 development agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And your recommendation for a Friends of Mother Earth network sounds quite consistent with the call for a knowledge network in the concept note for this dialogue. I would like to turn over the floor now to the distinguished representative of Malaysia, who will be followed by the representative of Nicaragua. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. At the outset, allow me to congratulate the President of the General Assembly for organizing this dialogue. I also would like to thank you, Madam Chair, for moderating this interactive dialogue, and panel members for their excellent presentation, which has further enriched today's discussion. I also would like to join other speakers in thanking the plurinational state of Bolivia, whose initiative has brought to this fourth series of interactive dialogue. The theme of today's dialogue emphasizing the importance of adapting a balanced a balanced approach to pursue development that is harmonious with our ecosystem is very timely as we embark on our mission to increase global awareness of economic, social, and environmental impacts of sustainable development activities on the planet. Malaysia ranks 21st globally in absolute diversity. Malaysia has protected over 23% of its territory, exceeding a global target of 10%. Mangrove and inland swamp areas are listed as priority protection areas. These are brief facts on our efforts to promote harmony with nature through the preservation of our rich biodiversity. In a lighter vein, we can all, in a small way, contribute to protect the environment by going green. To begin with, we can make a simple sacrifice by pledging for a greener world. Going green is not as hard as many people think. It is amazing how simple and everyday things can make a huge difference in caring for Mother Nature. Being environmentally friendly is not just a good deed, but it is also a good way to save money. Every year, we seem to be confronted by price hikes that many people will be in need of tightening their budget. In my country, for example, the increase in electricity and toll prices alone this year triggered a need for Malaysians to make some small lifestyle changes in adapting to the price hikes. For those worried about the electricity hike, a great way to reduce the electricity and water bills are to install solar panels and rainwater harvesting systems. Although it may be slightly pricey, it is a great investment in the long run, while at the same time a great way to preserve Mother Nature. Also, going more green will not only help us to save costs, but will also play a small part in reducing landfill waste, cleaning the air, and preserving our environment. We can make small changes in our everyday life, such as taking shorter showers, switching off the lights and fan when leaving the room, or taking the stairs rather than the elevator to make a difference. In a highly consumerist society, we often could not go a day without buying anything. But when we do buy our groceries or products, try to make a green choice by choosing products which last longer and energy efficient and biodegradable. We should also think twice before throwing things away. Before throwing something in the trash, try to think of creative ways of how we can reuse it. A quick search through the internet will show us how we can use things like old bottles, tin cans, cupboard to make amazing new things. The same goes for old furniture, electronics, clothes, and other household items. Items you may initially think of as rubbish can be transformed into a whole new item with a do-it-yourself makeover. And if not, we can always donate our unwanted items to the less fortunate. We must not forget that our trash may be someone else's treasure. One may not think that their green pledge means much, but if they implement these practices every day, they will accumulate into saving as quite a substantial amount of energy or products. And with every individual that makes this pledge, they are making an impact in their own way. Every little bit matters, so keep that in mind as we celebrate to commemorate the International Mother Earth Day. To conclude, I wish Happy International Mother Day to everybody in this room, and I thank you again, Madam Chair, for giving the floor.
Thank you so much. And we will hear next from the distinguished representative from Nicaragua, to be followed by the representative from Brazil.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Nicaragua first wishes to join others and to endorse the statement made by the distinguished ambassador of Bolivia. We also wish to thank you for convening this dialogue on harmony with nature. Nicaragua endorses this and the relevant resolution. Likewise, we wish to thank all the panelists for their excellent presentations. This shows scientific evidence confirming that our indigenous peoples, it just confirms what they have been saying for a long time now, and that is Mother Earth is in danger, and the human species with it, biodiversity. And therefore, it is crucial that all of us, all peoples, have an increased awareness on the need to take care of and love and respect our Mother Earth. developed countries must start to act responsibly and fulfill their commitments. Rio +20 represents an opportunity to show this. At the accelerated pace of consumerism and the technological methods, exploitation of natural resources on the earth, this is causing irreversible harm to the planet and threatens destroying the gifts from Mother Earth. These patterns of consumption and production are the result of the current economic model, and this is unsustainable. We thank Mr. Falconί for his explanation and the data provided on the negative impacts of climate change on our Mother Earth. There are increasingly intense earthquakes and other natural events, and our peoples are increasingly vulnerable to climate change. Therefore, it is important, all of us together, to join efforts to reverse this situation. Madam Coordinator, we must be the guardians of the planet and ensure that our common resources of humanity, including the air, be used sustainably and in a shared, equitable way between all nations, and we must correct the overexploitation of our resources. Accordingly, love and solidarity must be at the heart of all human activity without exception. And we must live like brothers and sisters in peace and harmony with each other and with nature. The United Nations has to become a center to harmonize the efforts of nations in order to achieve this common objective. We must, in crafting these SDGs, this provides a good opportunity to make sure that we can protect, defend, and save our Mother Earth. All countries, without exception, must promote this right of Mother Earth and respect for it, and to take collective and individual actions for all of humanity to avoid interference with the cycles of Mother Earth. We are committed to sustainable development for all nations. We must take due account of the basic principle of climate justice and common but differentiated responsibilities and equity. In Nicaragua, we have a development model that is in harmony with nature, with Mother Earth, and which is in line with this important resolution. As part of our commitment in the last 5 years, we have completely changed our energy matrix. I can proudly say that our energy matrix today is more than 50%, consists more than 50% of renewable energy, and our plan is to reach 90% renewable energy in this matrix. We are committed to promoting human development on the understanding of sustainable development and living in harmony with nature. This is focused on the human being and in an environment of governance and including citizen participation with values that are based on ancestral beliefs. We have initiated a national process for the Universal Declaration for the Common Good of the Earth and Humanity in all schools and homes in Nicaragua. Madam Coordinator, all our peoples have the right to live well within the context of sustainable development and in harmony with the common good of humanity and in Mother Earth. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. I would like to give the floor now to the distinguished representative of Brazil, to be followed by the representative of Kenya.
Gracias, señora Presidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the outset, may I thank the permanent representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia and the ambassador in leading this discussion on the harmony of nature and in the context beyond 2015. We also thank the President of the General Assembly for convening this meeting on Mother Earth. This is an opportunity to exchange ideas and reflect on our fundamental elements between humankind and nature. We have had dialogues in previous years between indigenous peoples, civil society, academia. This is crucial to reflect on the hegemonic paradigm of values and practices that are unsustainable. Madam Moderator, the top principle from Rio on environment and development says that human beings are at the focus of concerns dealing with sustainable development. They have the right to a healthy, productive life in harmony with nature. In the outcome document of Rio Plus 20, member states once again recognize that promoting harmony with nature is necessary to strike a balance between economic, environmental, and social needs for present and future generations. As Brazil sees it, sustainable development requires tangible changes in developments in an equitable way and in harmony with nature. This renewed focus and strengthened focus on sustainable development has been key for positive results of many social and economic policies in my country. Madam Moderator, we must think about public policies and models based on a more balanced paradigm on the three sustainable development dimensions and more favorable to patterns of life and economic models that are in harmony with nature. In this respect, the main goal in looking beyond 2015 is to set out an international context that is conducive to eradicating poverty and ensuring sustainable development in harmony with nature. We believe it is important to strengthen and renew the concept of sustainable development. Internationally, we must take into account common but differentiated responsibilities between developing and developed countries. Globally, this sustainable development paradigm in harmony with nature requires, for example, leadership of developed countries in adopting patterns for sustainable consumption and in facilitating environmentally correct technologies for developing countries. The main threat to harmony, as we heard from Cuba today, is the irrational use of natural resources. International cooperation is key in order to make progress towards this towards this development agenda, and one that is truly balanced. This should take into account the three dimensions of sustainable development, recognizing the main responsibilities of countries and to promote an environment that is conducive to sustainable development. I thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 6 speakers remaining, including 2 civil societies, so we'd like to close the list at this time and continue with the remaining speakers so that we allow some time for the panelists to respond to the many important points that have been raised so far. So I'd next like to call to the floor the distinguished representative from Kenya, to be followed by the representative from Egypt.
Madam Moderator, Excellencies, distinguished participants, please allow me to first thank the President of General Assembly and the delegations of Bolivia and Ecuador for organizing this interactive and very timely exchange. I would also like to recognize and appreciate the distinguished panelists for wonderful presentations that have set the tune for this discussion. Madam Moderator, Kenya would like to align itself with the presentation made by the permanent representative of Bolivia on behalf of the group of 77 and China. I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you Kenya's experiences in successfully coexisting in harmony with nature and Mother Earth. I will share with you 3 experiences and 3 ways forward, even though we have a lot of examples. First, let me just say that this discussion is very timely because it resonates very well with the ongoing discussion on the post-2015 development agenda. It also gives us an opportunity to raise awareness around the world on the challenges we face regarding the well-being of the planet and all the life it supports. The first example I want to share with you. Madam Moderator, individuals in their private capacity can make a huge difference. The Green Belt movement in Kenya, which was founded by the late Nobel Peace Laureate, Professor Wangari Maathai, initiated a national and now international tree planting and civic awareness campaign that has seen the planting of millions, in fact, an estimated 50 million trees in Kenya, and it has assisted nearly 1 million women, 900,000, to establish tree nurseries and plant trees to reverse the effects of deforestation and also to support themselves economically. The Kenyan Constitution, the second example that I want to give is the importance of having structural and legal framework. The Kenyan Constitution contains a whole chapter on environment requiring sustainable exploitation, utilization, and management and conservation of the environment and natural resources to ensure the equitable sharing of the accruing benefits. It sets a minimum tree cover of at least 10% of the land area, protecting and enhancing intellectual property of indigenous knowledge of biodiversity and the genetic resources of the communities, encouraging public participation in the management, protection, and conservation of the environment, and protecting genetic resources and biological diversity. The third example, Madam Moderator, is that the government of Kenya has also made physical interventions such as abolition of customs duty on imported timber used for various purposes meant to encourage importation of timber, consequently allowing replenishment of local resources. One of the most important lessons learned from this process is that we can all take simple actions that can make a huge difference, as has been mentioned earlier by other delegations. If each one of us plant, for example, 10 trees, the cumulative effect can build a critical mass within a few years, like we have seen with the example of the Green Belt movement in Kenya. Involvement in local initiatives and volunteering time to serve one's community, as demonstrated earlier, has greatly inspired many in Kenya especially. Madam Moderator, I would like to just mention, it is 10 years since Wangari Maathai, the late Professor Wangari Maathai, won her Nobel Peace Prize. And in commemoration of this, Kenya plans to, in her memory, to organize a tree planting, at least one tree, hopefully, on the 19th of May this year at this United Nations grounds. In fact, it will also be an occasion to unveil a tree that she planted on the 17th of May in 2000, before she passed on. As a way forward, and I'll mention just briefly 2 or 3, we all need to collectively change the unsustainable economic policies that are wresting control of the natural world to build private wealth for the few at the expense of many. A well-functioning economy should reduce the level of inequality by balancing private and public interests for a greater well-being of human beings and Mother Earth. We have to reorient our education curriculum to ensure early learning by students and youth of the importance of protecting Mother Earth and how to do it. Finally, Kenya places great importance on accurate, reliable, and timely statistical data for policy formulation environmental monitoring, assessment, and early warning systems. These initiatives have helped Kenya, as others relating to solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal electricity generation, and can be emulated by others to ensure that we protect Mother Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your mention of Wangari Maathai, who is an inspiration to all of us. I would now welcome to the floor the distinguished representative from Egypt, to be followed by the representative from China.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for giving me the floor. I would like to start by thanking the President of General Assembly, as well as the Permanent Representative of Bolivia for organizing this interactive debate on the occasion of Earth Day, which is taking place amid the efforts to develop sustainable development goals and shape the new development agenda post-2015. I would like also to thank the Permanent Mission of Bolivia for its initiative and efforts to establish the subject of our discussion today as an agenda item on the General Assembly agenda. At the outset, I would like to associate my comments with the statement of G77 and China. It is in the wake of 2008 international crisis related to finance, energy, and food that the need was felt to change the way we run our economies and business. Moreover, in view of the lack of addressing efficiently the challenges related to climate change, doing business as usual became no longer an option. It is in this context that calls were made for shifting into new paradigms to improve human well-being and social equity while significantly reducing environmental risks and ecological scarcities. These developments underscored the primordial importance of sustainable development as it calls for the convergence between the economic, social, and environmental dimensions of development. The problem is that implementation has proven to be difficult. In this regard, governance reform and accountability, which was raised in today's discussion by Frank Biermann, are important to address the implementation gap. Harmony with nature is based on applying a holistic thinking to all human activities in relation to nature, which is converging with the integration and cohesion of sustainable development 3 dimensions: economic, social, and environmental. Living in harmony with nature implies an equitable and balanced relationship with the planet. At the core of that relationship lies both a profound respect for the earth and an acknowledgement of the vital imperative that the planet continues to exist and thrive, as well as acceptance of humanity's responsibility to restore the health and integrity of the earth system. Until now, common thinking about the economy works only in conventional terms. For example, increasing wealth, managing supply and demand, market dynamics, and financial incentives, which have sidestepped a basic scientific understanding of how the earth system on which the world economy depends operate. It is important to highlight the extent to which this economic paradigm negatively affects sustainable development and efforts to attain harmony with nature. An exclusive emphasis on profit-making can significantly compromise sustainable development through unsustainable consumption and production patterns. Myself, being an Egyptian, I feel privileged to address the theme of harmony with nature, as it was one of the foundations, in addition to scientific thinking and hard work, based on which the ancient Egyptians created their civilization. Interestingly, Egyptians maintained some of their old sustainable practices, particularly in rural areas in the fields of agriculture and construction, which respect their surrounding nature. As an African also I would like to highlight the richness of the African continent in natural resources and in sustainable practices. Therefore, harmony with nature can bring a lot of answers to the continent's needs with regard to sustainable development. It is always said that in the aftermath of crisis, fresh and new ideas grow. It is important to be open when considering different options to achieve sustainable development. These options should not be mutually exclusive. On the contrary, they have to be mutually supportive. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. And I would like to inform the order of the floor is going to be the distinguished representative from China, then India, then Benin, then the two civil society discussants. It is just after 12:30, so I would ask that interveners please limit your remarks to 3 minutes if possible, so the panelists have a chance to respond, and then we can move to our concluding remarks. And speaking as a member of civil society myself, I'm sure that we would all very much welcome posting on the webpage for this dialogue on harmony with nature the full remarks that have been provided here today. They're all very important. So again, to turn to the floor to the distinguished representative from China, and if we could limit remarks to 3 minutes, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, China aligns itself with the statement made by the representative of Bolivia on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. China appreciates the contribution made by Bolivia through its initiative on the establishment of the International Day of Mother Earth and its promotion of humanity's harmony with nature. China believes that ecological civilization construction bears on humanity's survival, development, and future generations. We support the effort to make the intensification of ecological civilization construction and the promotion of a sustainable development the key area and the priority direction of the post-2015 development agenda. It is necessary to establish the notion of ecological civilization based on respecting, being in line with, and protecting nature. It is necessary to enhance economic consciousness, environmental protection consciousness, and ecological consciousness, and to develop the idea and the lifestyle of rational consumption, persist in economizing in resources, protecting the environment, adhere to the principle of a common but differentiated responsibility, the equitable principle, and the principle of capacity, actively respond to global climate change, protect biological diversity, and maintain global ecological security, increase forest coverage, and rationally use forest resources, control air pollution, and safely dispose hazardous materials, safeguard the safety of drinking water and for rural and urban residents, rationally allocate and highly efficiently use water resources, advance the recycling of water, while strengthening the building of systems for preventing floods, and strengthen maritime environmental protection and rationally use marine resources, advancing toward a new era of ecological civilization and building a beautiful China will constitute an important part of the effort to realize the Chinese nation's great dream of revitalizing China. The 18th National Congress of the Communist Party of China included ecological civilization construction along with economic, political, cultural, social construction in the overall 5-point planning on building socialism with Chinese characteristics. According to third planning of the 18th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, it is necessary to deepen the reform of the system of ecological civilization on the basis of centering on building beautiful China, accelerate building of ecological civilization construction, improving national mechanisms of land development, ecological use resources. China will continue to adhere to the basic national policy of economizing our resources and protecting the environment, more consciously promote green development, recycling development, and low-carbon development, and will never sacrifice the environment to gain economic growth for the moment. We were willing to join other countries in actively conducting exchanges and cooperation in the area of ecological civilization, promoting sharing of achievements, working together to build an ecologically sound, beautiful home on Earth. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to turn the floor to the distinguished representative from India, followed by the representative from Benin.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for giving me the floor. Let me begin by congratulating the plurinational state of Bolivia for having championed the idea of harmony with nature at the United Nations and for their leadership in organizing this interactive debate. We must also thank the President of the General Assembly for his stewardship in making this event possible. We, of course, thank the panelists for their presentations. Madam Moderator, this annual dialogue is an opportunity for reminding ourselves of the need to live in harmony with nature and for placing this unique concept at the center of the global discourse on sustainable development. Coming from India, we are, of course, deeply conscious of the need to live in harmony with nature. This is an established part of the Indian ethos and culture, a culture of frugality, of doing more with less, of taking only as much as required from nature, and of no wastage, is a part and parcel of the wisdom we have received through generations over millennia. Living in harmony with nature must also mean upholding of the principle of equity. It must ensure an equitable sharing of the nature's resources. Nature does not discriminate between the rich and the poor, even though some of us tend to take more from nature than what is equitable or indeed fair. The current consumption patterns and the so-called modern lifestyles made popular in the developed countries are not only unsustainable but also inequitable, and we must find new pathways to transition to a culture of frugal living, less wastage and equitable sharing of resources. We cannot treat nature as a commodity. We must also recognize the crucial role of technology for finding solutions to the sustainability problem the world faces. There is a need to fully utilize the potential of science, technology, innovation, and to craft a facilitative process to foster cooperation and collaboration for finding collective solutions. It is also important, Madam Moderator, to remind ourselves of the compact we forged at the Rio Conference in 1992, and many speakers have alluded to this, and the need for fully respecting the Rio Principles for Sustainable Development. This is all the more important in the context of the SDGs and the post-2015 development agenda. Madam Moderator, it is our conviction that poverty eradication must remain the overarching focus of international cooperation. Needs of the poor, in our opinion, are at the heart of achieving sustainable development. The environment cannot be improved in conditions of poverty. In conclusion, Madam Chair, allow me to quote the words of the Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi when she spoke at the Stockholm Conference on the Human Environment in 1972. Begin quote, "Modern man must re-establish an unbroken link with nature and with life. He must again learn to invoke the energy of growing things and to recognize, as did the ancients in India centuries ago, that one can take from the earth and the atmosphere only so much as one puts back into them." End quote. I thank you.
Thank you. And I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Benin, followed by civil society discussant Dr. Judy Kuryansky.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I don't have a prepared speech for this event, but I would like to bear witness to the importance of this issue in the process of drafting the post-2015 development agenda. The Rio summit gave us the full measure of the challenges that we have to face in relations between man and nature in order to ensure our planet survives beyond the challenges of climate change and the dangerous social and economic areas. There are threats to the biosphere, and we need to think again about our living models and our future projects in order to re-establish a balance within the planet's limits. I come from a country where we respect and celebrate nature as the basis of life. We have a set of rules which regulate the relations between man and nature, the sacred forests, the sacred rivers, the sacred places, and preservation of resources have enabled us to maintain this heritage, this common heritage for present and successive generations. Inspired by our traditions, today we have models of production that contribute towards preserving the environment while having economic growth. Today, we're developing a similar agricultural model that will provide jobs, but also meet needs in a sustainable way. And we're working to share with other countries that are combating poverty our own model so that we can help the international community to resolve these global problems, crucial ones, when it's a question of preserving nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to turn the floor to our two civil society discussants. First, Dr. Judy Kuryansky, and followed by Dr. Ashwani Vasish.
Thank you very much, and great appreciation to all the stakeholders and participants in this very important dialogue that comes at the perfect time that the Open Working Group is discussing the post-2015 agenda, and also on the heels of the discussions that were convened by the President of the General Assembly about multi-stakeholder partnerships, because it's important for us to work together about this. I'd like to offer some reflections about what happened, what was discussed this morning, and some quick recommendations from three hats that I wear. One hat is from academia. As a professor at Columbia University Teachers College, which is a very diverse community of students, I'd like to recommend that in the focus group of education, that this concept of diversity of culture be integrated throughout the education systems in all the countries in the post-2015 agenda. The President of the General Assembly this morning asked for research. In the field of ecopsychology, there is much research that supports the importance of nature and the appreciation of nature for the immune system, for health, for sustainable individuals as well as societies. For example, children with ADHD, which we know so much about, had higher cognitive development when they simply walk in a park. And patients in hospitals, research has shown that they heal better when they are simply able to see a window from their hospital bed that shows some green. Research shows this. There's also models that we have around the country, and the Open Working Group and has been looking for models, and we've heard some of them this morning, that show the importance of working with nature as a way for sustainable individuals and societies. The Pachamama Foundation has been respecting the biodiversity knowledge and the dreaming practices of the Achua people in Ecuador. I'm sure the delegates from Ecuador are very familiar with that. The Women's Alliance in India and in Africa is teaching women farming, but not just farming and being able to own the land and get their rights to the land, but also feel that they deserve this. So psychological principles and people's feeling of pride is so important in this discussion. There is becoming now sustainable retreats and workshops in Belize, so that besides people appreciating the parrotfish in this that beautifully biodiverse country, that they also are learning about their personal growth. There was discussion this morning about the importance of arts. El Salvador has art in action where kids are not going into gangs when they are engaging in music. My own programs around the world in Haiti and Japan and China after disaster show that kids, when they're participating in music, become resilient. These are the issues being discussed at the Open Working Group, and these, I think, are targets that we need to pay attention to. So in my second, quickly, hat as an NGO representative of ECOSOC-accredited NGOs here at the United Nations, the circle of friends that was called for here for Mother Earth resonates a great deal with the circle of friends that we are establishing about mental health and well-being, that Ambassador Otto from Palau and Ambassador from Benin and the Ambassador from Trinidad and Tobago have taken up as a cause. And I think the more that people participate in this from a multi-stakeholder point of view, the member states and and civil society and other stakeholders, we will be able to accomplish something that will aim towards the well-being of the people of this planet. Well-being has already been discussed here at the UN, and it needs to be highlighted. This started by the government of Bhutan in 2012 with the resolution and then the high-level meeting. We have been advocating at the Psychology Coalition about the importance of well-being as another paradigm included with GDP for development. We must look at this. The Happy Planet Index has been honoring Costa Rica twice, and the government of Denmark, to look at psychological well-being and also ecological footprint. Our own state of Maryland has a general progress indicator. All these things are real measures that we can adopt, use, and apply to the post-2000 as a journalist. And
if I could ask, I'm so sorry to wrap up fairly quickly because we have to take time from the other speakers, and I'm sure they would like to respond to your remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to turn to the last speaker, Dr. Ashwani Vazish, and if you could please keep your remarks to 2 minutes if possible, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Excellencies, Madam Moderator, members of the distinguished panel, my name is Ashwani Vazish, a professor of sustainability at Ramapo College of New Jersey and the U.S. representative for the People's Sustainability Treaties, which can be found at sustainabilitytreaties.org. I'm a sustainability planner with a focus on urban ecology. My basic argument is that if we want to understand how to operationalize the enduring concept of harmony with nature in hard, pragmatic terms, there are two places we can look. We can look either at pre-industrial civilizations where living in harmony with nature was necessary and even imperative, or we can look at the cutting edge of ecological science, specifically at scale hierarchic ecosystem ecology, which shows us that the only way in which we can live sustainably is indeed in harmony with nature. In this latter view, humans are most appropriately seen as components of ecosystems. We need to, more than anything else, see ourselves as a part of nature, not apart from it. Further, cities are usually seen as the quintessential technological artifacts of human civilization, thought to set us apart from nature. If we are truly to live in harmony with nature, we must first ecologize our cities, harmonizing them with the natural processes and functions. From a theoretical perspective, I present three models. The first, complex systems. In complex systems, reality is always more than a singularity. We need to depict nature in multiple and diverse ways. This is the scientific imperative for a participatory model of societal decision-making. The second deals with the nature of nature itself, in that ecosystems are best seen as emergent from often intangible processes and functions that undergird them. So a tree, for example, is most usefully seen as emerging from the flows of water, carbon, nitrogen, calcium, and so on, not as tree, trunk, branches, roots, and so on. And the third deals with the way we think about capital. If we go back to a pre-industrial past, we see that there are three factors of production: land, labor, and capital. Capital or money was most scarce, and so a system was devised to prioritize the conversion of land and labor to capital. This, today, we call capitalism. Today, however, we live in a different world, a world in which nature is the true scarce resource and in which capital is abundant. Now, our task is to use our endowments of man-made capital to enhance and restore both human capital and natural capital. In closing, three specific recommendations. Consistently and pervasively promote the deployment of green infrastructure as a substitute for built-in infrastructure. Consistently and pervasively promote the deployment of urban heat island mitigation strategies. Consistently and pervasively promote the deployment of measures that take a process function approach to telling change over time. For instance, we should adopt some measure like the Genuine Progress Index as a substitute for gross domestic product. And we should encourage on all fronts the deployment of measures such as ecological footprint, the water footprint.
If we could wrap up, thank you very much with your recommendations. If you could conclude quickly. Thank you.
I thank you for this opportunity to intervene in the discussion and for considering my thoughts on the enduring notion of harmony with nature.
Thank you so much to all the interveners, and this concludes the intervention portion of the panel. I would like to invite the panelists to provide some concluding remarks based on what they've heard today. And if you could please limit your remarks to a minute, if possible, to up to 2, so that we may hear concluding remarks from the offices of the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly. So we'll go in the order in which you spoke. So Dr. Biermann.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting discussions, very interesting and very useful comments. I want to be, as the last speaker from the panel, to be a bit provocative and reflect on the contrast between the Anthropocene idea and the idea of nature. And I believe that the idea of the Anthropocene, the new epoch on planetary history, drives the idea of nature a bit further. I think if you really think this very carefully through, then the Anthropocene idea means that there is actually no nature. There's no part of the globe that is not dominated, managed, regulated, threatened by humans. So in a sense, the meaning of Anthropocene is that the human species has taken over the entire planet. And I think that's a very important conclusion. There are lots of books out there that postulate the end of nature, the end of the environment, the end of wilderness. And I think it's very important also for governments to accept this knowledge that we as societies and especially the governments are now, in a sense, in the charge of the planet. And this raises a very important normative question. I give you one example that you're all familiar with. It's a 2-degree target of the climate convention and the climate discussions. And I think it's very striking to see this target. It's the first time, in a way, that governments in the United Nations context have agreed on a temperature target for the planet. I mean, there's some debate about whether this is too much or too little as a target, but the fact is that the United Nations member states have agreed on a temperature target. And I think this is just the beginning of a normative debate about how we want to live with our planet. And I think this is a very important distinction to think about the Anthropocene in these terms, because humans are not part of nature, humans are important, humans are the driving force on this planet nowadays. And I think this puts a much higher importance, a much higher responsibility on the governments of this planet to work on these issues. And thank you very much. Happy Mother's Day. And as Kermit the Frog used to say, it's very difficult to be green. Thanks a lot for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biermann. And now a minute of concluding remarks of wisdom from Dr. Baudot.
Thank you very much. I have heard many important statements from delegates and representatives of NGOs. It is encouraging to hear such wide support for harmony with nature. I would only like to emphasize that achievement of harmony with nature and human life in cadence with the rhythms of nature requires the empathy and compassion of the heart, as well as the rationality of the head. As Plato and subsequent philosophers have admonished, only the rational nature of the soul in relation to the sentiments generated by the heart, such as empathy, compassion, and love for nature, can control the selfish appetites of humankind, the greed, the materialism, the consumerism, which are actually threatening the fragile harmony that exists between humankind and nature. A chestless society is a poor augur for the survival of human life. But we must remember that nature will live on. We will not. To engage the sentiments of the heart requires education in the arts, the humanities, as well as the sciences. An education as holistic as nature itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Baudot. And I would like to turn to Mr. Gerritsen. And unfortunately, if you could keep it to a half minute now, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
On our farm, we have principles that we live by, and I've shared some of them with you today. In your body, in your deliberations, in your leadership, I think that relying upon 4 years ago today in Bolivia, was the delegates at the conference there voted in the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. And I have these in my longer printed comments. But it seems to me that that really serves as a basis, that if you understand that as a foundational principle, that then it becomes much easier to work forward in the day-to-day policies that you need to pull off in benefit of the inhabitants of Mother Earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gerritsen. And then for our last words of wisdom, we would like to hear from Dr. Falconí Benitez. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for this enriching discussion. I think that we don't disagree. It's important to take collective, not individual actions. And in this respect, the energy industry is not investing enough in renewable energies. On the contrary, it is focusing more on projects with other fuels that require high energy. And that is why I'm insisting that the United Nations focus on net emissions for fuels that are renewable. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to thank all the panelists for their important remarks today. As it's been mentioned several times, we're at a critical juncture right now with the planning of the post-2015 development and climate change agendas. And the words that we've heard today will help lay the foundation for creating a new structure of an implementation of Earth-centered governance that will bring us forward to the future. So I thank the panelists, and I also, again, thank the plurinational state of Bolivia for sponsoring this important dialogue. Before concluding, participants are invited to remain seated for closing remarks by His Excellency Michel Tomó-Monte, Vice President of the General Assembly, on behalf of the President, and Mr. Thomas Gass, Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination and Interagency Affairs, on behalf of the Secretary General. The panel is now concluded. Thank you, and happy International Mother Earth Day.